My presentation about decentralization in Iraq. And one word before going to the presentation, my approach to present today about the development and the trajectory of decentralization in Iraq comes from a pure political economy vintage because of the fluid political situation that's emerging in Iraq since 2014. Of course, it's been always like this, but it's been on surface since 2014, a very fluid political situation, ups and downs, moving factors, and that's why I'm going to approach it from pure political economy. Now, what's in the agenda for today? I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on the environment in which decentralization being activated in Iraq in 2015, and I will have a few remarks about that as well. And then we are going to go through some important country and provincial dynamics that affected policy decisions, affected the implementation of decentralization, and so on and so forth. At the end of the presentation, I will touch on the trajectory of decentralization in Iraq and some of the challenges and entry points that we might able to use and utilize in order to activate again decentralization process. So basically, we're going to focus on major factors on provincial, technical, national level that affects policy choices and security situation, as I mentioned, and by default, how all these major factors have affected the implementation of decentralization in Iraq. Now, before going to setting the scenes in Iraq, and these points that you see on the screen now about the challenges that the Iraqi governments are facing is not as of today or 2003 or the 70s. It's very interesting phenomena in Iraq that it's such a chronic problem, protracted structural conflict in Iraqi governance structure. And this related to several factors. Number one, the tug of war or kind of the fluid situation between the positive legitimacy of any governance in a government cabinet in Iraq at any time. If we limit our chronology, we talk here exactly between, I would say 2003 up to now. Though this, the struggle between government legitimacy, whether it's positive, which means actually happening within the citizen of Iraq, or perceived, which means based on mechanical elections, and we have a political process that yields, democratic process that yields a government which stays in Baghdad but has no ties or actual positive legitimacy with the rest of the country for different ethno-religious and political reasons that depends on each region and each province. Of course, urbanization, forced migration, till this moment there are IDP camps in the Kurdistan region. There are some IDPs being forced again to the place of origins without services. Also because of the some climate change strongly affecting the southern parts of Iraq, there is a flux of people coming to Baghdad looking for job and employment, leaving the villages and remote areas and all agriculture areas. So that adds to the burden of governing and economic challenges. Another important challenge is the political transformation of militias, and how that, of course, this is a wide range, a very broad topic, but why I put it here, it links to the decentralization because of the fact that we saw as we decentralized some of the powers to the provinces, specifically in the southern part of Iraq, in some remote areas, the militias were able by the exploiting the rules and delegation of power to the local governance in some provinces to hijack the province, the local government in these areas, and make sure to control the border crossing and confiscate some of the local revenue that's been emerged in these provinces. So This is another factor that affects the advancing or halting of decentralization. Three, governing system. In 2005's constitution, if we look at the constitution, we see three conflicting visions that's been manifested in the Iraqi constitution and about how Iraq should be governed. And that's the Kurdish vision, the Sunni vision to some sort, and of course the Shia vision. The Kurdish vision goes to the maximum aspect of decentralization all the way to almost confederation, while the Shia vision is still stick into the deep-rooted centralized vision, and the Sunni some in between. Nowadays, they are tilting more toward more decentralized of the Sunni areas, and we will touch on that in the next slides. Political fragmentation and elections, and how does that affect decentralization? In general, whenever we have election tug of war, horse trading starts actually at the governorate level, the province, the provincial government. Who is the governor of Basra in a specific election time affects the result. And that's why ahead of each elections, we see numerous firing of governors, central government trying to curtail the power of certain local governments in Basra vis-a-vis Misan and so on and so forth. So that affects, of course, policy choices and decentralization, service delivery on the provincial level. Chronic political and governance problems vary across Iraqi province. What I mean by this is that Iraq, if we talk about decentralization or governing structure in Iraq, yes, we talk about one country, but actually in each province has its own intrinsic factors that has its own problems in implementing or halting decentralization, has its own specific problem of certain issues towards service delivery. So what I'm saying here is that there's no one size fits all for Iraq. We need to go a little bit deeper and have a kind of a granular approach into governance and governance structure in Iraq. Now, let me a few remarks before I explain this slide. Decentralization in Iraq, if we look at all Iraqi institutions, including the ones under the dictatorship of Saddam, for example, the Constitution of 1970, and of course, later the Constitution in 2005, we see some sort of decentralized governing structure, but the names and terms are different, and the powers, the degree, the gradation of power devolution or administrative decentralization are different. What does that mean? It means that at the end of the day in Iraq, governing and decentralization heavily impacted by a political will of who is sitting as the president of Iraq or the prime minister on Iraq. So it's still heavily centralized mentality that affects the implementation of decentralization. Now, so because there was a clear article, a constitutional article in 2005, and in 2008 we have a law for decentralization, law 21, but during the two terms of Maliki, he did not activate decentralization. Why decentralization been activated in 2015? Because Iraq was under, some parts of Iraq was under Daesh occupation. We needed the international community to help us in liberating these areas. There was a huge political friction with the Kurdistan region. Of course, in 2017, ended up with the Kurdish referendum. And then, of course, regional destabilization because the Yemen war and the war in Syria had a spillover effect in Iraq. Why does that affect decentralization? Because it affects a rentier mentality, a rentier state like Iraq. 95% of Iraq revenue depends on oil. The central government will struggle with its perceived legitimacy, trying to control these revenues and make it a political issue in terms of the revenue distribution. So it's very difficult to convince such a government to decentralize. However, because of these factors in 2015, the then Prime Minister Abbadi decided to activate the decentralization. However, the process was overshadowed by politicalized anti-corruption campaign, stalled government formation, the public demonstration that started to emerge since 2015, 2016, some sort 2017, and of course later in 2019, and so on and so forth. This was the major factors into the political and security environment when decentralization was started to be roll out across Iraq. Why this is important in understanding, go deeper into analyzing the environment which decentralization was activated in Iraq, because it was not completely a homegrown decision. At the end of the day, it was also encouraged, incentivized, and in certain points pushed by the international community, because the exclusivity at the Baghdad government and cabinet yielded some grievances which ended up with Daesh occupation. So based on these note by the international community, Iraq then moved into activating decentralization. Another important factor which till this today also impacts the Iraqi government decision is the plummeting of the oil prices. When the oil prices goes down, we see Baghdad moves a little bit forward in terms of decentralization. When oil prices goes up, like for example, nowadays, everyone is talking about how to re-centralize power in Baghdad. And that's a very huge factor in terms of why decentralization always was like one step forward, two steps backward between 2015 up to date. Quick chronology here, as I said, between 2014-16, incentivized by the factors that we talked about, decentralization activated in Iraq. And the reason why we use the term activate, because decentralization, the law for decentralization actually legislated in 2008, but it took that many years to be incentivized by certain challenges to the existence of the Iraqi government and country in order for the central government in Baghdad to decide to decentralize. And then in 2017, the implementation of decentralization was challenged with many bottlenecks, because there was a very controversial, contradictory set of laws and regulations between the central and province. Some provinces went and overextended its power. Some provinces were timid, and we ended up with several bottlenecks in very important areas in terms of service delivery, especially in education and water. Yeah.
Dr. Shahla, we have this is super interesting. 2-3 minutes left.
Okay, very quickly, because we touched on these chronology as well. So I'm gonna go to the challenges as I touched on the presentation. Of course, decentralization, and it's a long-term, non-linear progress. However, what we have in Iraq is a huge frustration, public frustration with the service delivery, with the power sharing, and also revenue sharing. So as if there is a gap between what the public wants and the solutions that they wanted yesterday, whereas decentralization by default, it's a very long-term process. And that's why for many Iraqis nowadays, decentralization was not up to their expectation. Decentralization, if we fast forward to today, nowadays we have technical and administrative confusion between the powers of the provinces and the power of the central government, and so on and so forth. Why I see, and I will conclude with that, why I see, and based on many discussion with many Iraqi decision makers in several provinces, including, of course, the capital, Iraq, decentralization, some of them mentioned that, well, it's a de facto issue. We have to decentralize, while the central government trying to hold into power a little bit, but at the end of the day, we have to decentralize, because first of all, the public discontent, for example, even last 2 days, we have emerging of the demonstrations in the southern part of Iraq for lack of service delivery, and also because of the increasing in the prices of gas and everything else. So public discontent is an important pressuring point on the Iraqi government to go ahead and move forward with the decentralization. Also, because of civicness, and I call it civicness, is we see a more political maturity at the at the population level, which creates also another gap between what the government wants to do with the traditional tools and ways, where the Iraqi population, especially the youth movement, is completely on a different track, wanting different issues. The demographic factors, the demographic bulge in Iraq also make decentralization a de facto governing structure for Iraq. And of course, with the financial crisis and the existence of several development programs, these are all entry points that we can utilize in order to move forward again and reactivate decentralization in Iraq, especially that nowadays we are in the midst of a very heated government formation process. But at the end of the day, everyone is expecting that we have a slightly new governing structure in Baghdad. The nature of the government cabinet we are anticipating is going to be different from the recent ones. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I took extra few minutes.